All right, what's up, everyone? Today we're going to continue our discussion on the civil rights movement. We're going to talk about what measures are being taken to change the laws and to get the legislature passed. And then we're going to also talk about what the legislature is and what it does and the outcomes of the civil rights movement. So yesterday we talked about the March on Washington, D.C., which happened in 1963. 250,000 people marched on D.C. to protest politicians and to tell them that they want change. And that was a form of passive resistance. However, we have a lot of forms of passive resistance that are going on during this time. There are boycotts, which, like the Montgomery bus boycott, which you're going to watch a video about. We have sit-ins, like in Greensboro, North Carolina. Civil disobedience and freedom rides all are forms of passive resistance, which are, again, Martin Luther King Jr.'s idea of nonviolent protests. So what really starts this whole movement, we have Rosa Parks, and she decides to not give up her seat to a white man on a bus. She gets arrested, she gets put in jail, and here's a picture of her mugshot. That actually sparks the Montgomery bus boycott, which you're going to watch a video about. Some of the times with the marches that are going on and the protests and demonstrations, they're not going really well. The police, the fire department turns up, they turn water hoses on people, which, shooting very high pressure water at people. They beat them with the nightsticks and arrest people, even sometimes sicking the dogs on the protesters, trying to say, we want to end segregation, we want civil rights. Oftentimes people get arrested, they get lined up and sent to prison, and even young boys who are out protesting for their rights get arrested and put in jail. One example we have here is a picture of a sit-in where these African American men are sitting at a counter, and it's a whites only counter. They're not supposed to sit there. So they're being refused service. None of the servers are serving them. They're not getting any food, but they're just sitting there. And sometimes they get arrested. Sometimes they get, ripped out of the chairs. And sometimes, like we have this picture here, people are just dumping, drinks and food and whatever on them. But this is one way of trying to show how stupid these laws are, how stupid segregation was, and to make change in the public opinion. All right, so we have the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Lyndon Johnson plays a huge role in getting this act passed, actually signs it into effect, and it prohibits discrimination against race, religion, national origin, gender, all types of things. So for jobs, for loans, all of these things, discrimination is now illegal, and it is against the law to discriminate somebody based on those factors. It also desegregates public accommodations. So pools, hotels, restaurants, movie theaters, all those things, we're not going to have a white section and a black section, or a whites only and the black movie theater. All public accommodations are forced to be desegregated. Here is a famous photo. We've got Lyndon B. Johnson right here in the center. And he is actually shaking hands with Martin Luther King Jr. right after signing this effect. And again, it changes the way our society is shaped. It takes some time to actually go into effect for people to accept that this is the way it is, but it does change the way the society is. And another huge outcome, we have the Voting Rights Act of 1965. So a year later, Lyndon B. Johnson signs another huge act that changes the way society is. And this is outlawing literacy tests. It makes it, anything that Southerners were trying to do to prevent African Americans from voting, it outlaws those means. And there are riots after this law is passed that the president actually has to issue federal registrars to go to the South to register voters there. Because people are refusing to register African Americans to vote, and he sees that the federal government has to do something to make sure that it is effective and it actually passes. So here is a chart showing you the amount of African Americans registered to vote in 1960, and then a year after the Voting Rights Act is passed, we have huge increases. So 1966, in some states it doubles, triples, quadruples the amount of people that are able to vote. And you can see Alabama, Mississippi, some of the biggest gains by 1966. That's the Deep South, where the segregation and everything was a way of life. And another outcome we have, Thurgood Marshall becomes the first African-American Supreme Court justice a few years after the Voting Rights Act is passed, and he was, instrumental in the Brown versus Board of Education case. He was the lead lawyer for the NAACP, and he kept, in the spotlight, kept in the fame with the civil rights movement, and became the first African-American Supreme Court justice. Unfortunately, the whole movement kind of ends because Martin Luther King Jr. is assassinated in April of 1968. Here's a photo of him. He was shot by a sniper on his balcony of his hotel while in Memphis, Tennessee, helping out for a demonstration. And that is kind of what ends our civil rights movement and all the demonstrations with his assassination. Stay tuned for actually a little sneak peek of a little field trip that I went on talking about the civil rights movement locally here.
All right, so I'm here in Richmond, Virginia, right next to the Executive Mansion where the governor lives. And today we're going to talk about the Virginia Civil Rights Memorial right here. So Barbara Rose Johns was 16 years old when she realized that her school was not giving her the equal education that it gave whites that were living in Farmville, Virginia. So she met with some classmates and decided the best thing to do was to go on strike, because she read about it that some school in the north had gone on strike because they wanted, better uniforms. So she actually got with those classmates, made fake notes, gave them to the teachers to get everybody into the auditorium for a big assembly. And that's where she talked to her school and convinced them all that they needed to go on strike. The strike lasted for 2 weeks before the school district decided, yeah, we're going to build them a new school. But this was then picked up by some Richmond area lawyers who were already working on the case for Brown versus Board of Education. So here we have Oliver Hill, who we remember is the lead lawyer for the Virginia families in Brown versus Board of Education. Also on the back here, we have a quote from Thurgood Marshall, who we remember became the first African-American Supreme Court justice and also was the lead lawyer on the Brown versus Board of Education case for all the families represented by the NAACP. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. You can click subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section below, and now do your schoolwork.